There is a raccoon that comes to your yard alone. You may have noticed this without thinking much about it. A single raccoon appearing at the same hour, moving through the same parts of the yard, doing the same things it always does. Alone, always alone. You may have assumed this is simply how raccoons are, solitary animals, nighttime visitors, independent by nature. But that assumption is wrong, and the raccoon that comes to your yard alone is not simply being a raccoon. She is telling you something in the only language available to a creature who cannot speak about what is happening in her life. Raccoons are not solitary by preference. They are social animals whose natural state involves connection with mothers, with siblings, with the family groups that form the core of their daily existence. The raccoon that comes to your yard alone has not chosen solitude. She has arrived at it, through loss or separation or the particular circumstance of a life that has, for reasons you do not know, left her without the company her species was built to have. And the things she does in the hours she spends alone in your yard, the behaviors that look from the outside like ordinary raccoon behavior, are, on closer inspection, the behaviors of an animal navigating something much heavier than a night's foraging. Tonight you are going to understand what she is going through. Welcome back to Hidden Backyard Wildlife, the channel where we sit with the small wild lives that share our yards and try to understand what they understand about the world. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe before this video is over, because what you are about to learn is going to permanently change the way you look at the single raccoon that appears at your yard in the dark. Because you will finally understand that the alone in your observation is not the same as the alone in her experience. Today we are walking through 8 things a raccoon that keeps coming back alone is going through. What each of those things tells us about the emotional and social world of an animal most people have never thought of as having one. And why the solitary figure you have been watching from your kitchen window may be carrying something that deserves more from you than the casual glance you have been giving it. Stay with me from beginning to end because behavior number 6 is the one that changes everything about how we understand what loneliness looks like in a species that cannot name it. And the final one, number 8, is the one I think will stay with you the longest, especially if you have ever come to the window and found her there again, alone again in the same yard at the same hour, and felt something you could not quite explain. The first thing the raccoon that comes alone is doing, the thing most visible if you know what to look for, is looking. Not for food, not for water, not for any of the practical resources that explain her presence in your yard on a practical level. For someone. Raccoons who have lost a companion, a mother, a sibling, a kit that did not survive, a mate during the brief period of raccoon pair bonding, demonstrate a behavioral pattern that researchers studying small mammal grief responses have termed searching behavior. The animal moves through familiar shared locations repeatedly, reads the air at points where the companion's scent was once present, returns to specific spots that were associated with the other animal's presence, pausing longer than foraging requires, reading more carefully than hunger explains. Researchers studying post-loss behavior in wild raccoon populations have documented this searching pattern as a consistent feature of the acute phase following social loss, with individuals returning to last known association points of the missing animal in a behavioral loop that persists for days or weeks before gradually diminishing. When the raccoon in your yard stops at a specific corner and reads the air there, longer than necessary, more carefully than a food search requires, she may be reading for a presence that is no longer in that corner. When she circles back to a spot she has already investigated, she is not confused. She has not forgotten she was already there. She is returning to the last known coordinates of someone she is not yet ready to stop looking for. She is looking for someone in your yard who is not there, and she will keep looking until the looking finally, slowly, stops giving her any information she does not already have, and then she will stop, and the stopping will be its own kind of thing. Raccoons do not live in isolation within their territories. They live in social landscapes, overlapping ranges, shared pathways, coordinated activity patterns that develop between individuals who have spent significant time together. A mother and her adult daughters often maintain ranges that overlap extensively. Siblings from the same litter maintain awareness of each other across adulthood. The social fabric of raccoon life is not obvious to human observers because it operates largely in the dark and through chemical communication, but it is real and it is complex. When a raccoon loses a social companion, that fabric tears, and the reorganization of a torn social landscape is not a simple or a quick thing. Researchers studying home range dynamics in raccoons after social disruption have found that the loss of a social companion produces measurable changes in ranging behavior, with individuals showing altered movement patterns, changed use of previously shared pathways, and a period of increased exploratory behavior as the animal begins the process of establishing new social contacts or adjusting to a reduced social world. The raccoon that comes alone to your yard is, in part, reorganizing. She is traveling routes that used to be traveled together, now traveled alone. She is visiting locations that used to be shared, now visited by one. She is doing the quiet, exhausting, invisible work of making a social world that functioned with two function with one. You can sometimes see it in the particular quality of her movement, slightly more deliberate than efficient, slightly more thorough than necessary, as if she is checking things more carefully now that she has to check them all herself. The vigilance that used to be shared is now entirely hers. The foraging that used to be coordinated is now entirely solo. Every task that was once a shared task has become a solo task. She is doing more, with less, in the dark, alone. There is a specific quality to the vigilance of a solitary raccoon that is different from the vigilance of a raccoon in a group. It is heavier, more constant, more interrupted. Raccoons in social groups distribute the work of watching. One animal forages while another monitors the environment. Alarm calls travel through the group, giving each individual faster threat detection than any one animal could achieve alone. The presence of social companions is itself a safety resource. More eyes, more ears, more noses collectively covering more of the threat landscape than any individual could cover alone. The raccoon that comes alone has lost that distributed safety. Researchers studying predator vigilance in raccoon social groups have found that solitary raccoons show measurably elevated individual vigilance rates compared to raccoons foraging in social groups, spending more time in head-up, scanning posture and less time feeding, and showing more frequent and more intense responses to environmental disturbances. She is not more nervous. The world has not become more dangerous since she lost her companion, but she is doing more watching than she used to do because she is the only watcher now. Every moment of vigilance that used to be shared is now hers alone. The cost of safety has doubled for her in the most practical biological sense. If you watch her carefully, at the feeder at the compost bin moving through the yard, you will see the interruption. The eating broken more often than it needs to be by the scanning that cannot wait because there is no one else to do it. The foraging less efficient, less complete, less satisfying than the foraging of an animal who has a partner in the watching. She is getting less food and spending more energy and doing more work and being more tired and carrying all of it alone, in the dark, in the yard she keeps coming back to because it is one of the few places left in her territory that feels like anything at all. Grief and social loss in animals do not produce the same outcome in every individual. Some animals show extended searching behavior. Some show dramatic range contraction. Some show increased exploratory behavior, ranging more widely, investigating new locations, as if the loss of the familiar has propelled them outward toward the unfamiliar. The raccoon that comes alone to your yard may be doing something that looks, from the outside, like simply being a raccoon visiting a food source. But it may be something more than that. It may be the particular movement of an animal that is, in the only way available to it, trying something new. Researchers studying behavioral responses to social loss in small mammals have found that the period following companion loss is often characterized by increased novelty-seeking behavior, with individuals venturing into new territories, investigating new food sources, and making contact with previously unknown individuals more frequently than during periods of social stability. Your yard may be new to her, or newly important to her in a way it was not before the loss. She may be here alone, in part because your yard is one of the places her exploration has brought her, one of the new things she has found in the process of finding a life that works without the one she lost. If she is new to your yard, you are, in some sense, one of the new things she is trying, one of the new places, one of the new anchors she is building her reorganized world around. And the fact that she keeps coming back, that your yard is becoming a regular part of her new pattern rather than a one-time investigation, means she has decided, in the particular way that raccoons decide things, that you and your yard are part of what comes next. The most immediate and visible sign of the social loss a raccoon is carrying is not in her searching behavior or her ranging patterns or the quality of her vigilance. It is in how she eats. Food intake in raccoons, like food intake in most social mammals, is directly affected by social context. Raccoons that forage in social proximity to known companions show different feeding patterns than solitary foragers. Longer feeding bouts, greater food intake per visit, less interrupted feeding, more efficient use of food sources. Researchers studying feeding behavior in raccoons under different social conditions have found that the presence of familiar social companions is associated with reduced stress hormones during foraging, with lower cortisol levels in socially foraging raccoons compared to solitary foragers, even when the solitary forager is in a familiar location with no objective increase in threat. The raccoon that comes alone to your yard is eating in a body that is running higher on stress hormones than it should be, not because your yard is dangerous, because she is carrying the neurochemistry of social loss, the elevated cortisol, the disrupted dopamine signaling that follows the removal of a known companion from a social mammal's life. She eats less than she needs to, she eats less than she would eat if she were not alone. The food does not quite satisfy in the way food satisfies when it is eaten in a context of social safety. The hunger is the same, the food is the same, the eating is different. If you have ever sat down to a meal you needed and found yourself barely able to eat it because something was wrong in your life that had nothing to do with the food, then you already understand something about the raccoon at your bird feeder that most people who watch her will never think to see. Sit with that for a moment. This is the one that changes everything about how we understand what loneliness looks like in a species that cannot name it. For a long time, the scientific consensus was that social loss in animals produced primarily behavioral effects, changes in ranging, feeding, vigilance, that could be understood in purely mechanistic terms without reference to anything resembling subjective experience. The animal's behavior changed. The animal did not feel the change in any way that deserved the word feeling. That consensus has been significantly revised. Researchers studying the neurobiological correlates of social loss in mammals have found that the experience of losing a social companion produces measurable changes in brain chemistry, in the opioid system, in the oxytocin system, in the stress hormone cascade that parallel the neurobiological signature of what we in humans call grief. The changes are not metaphorical, they are not analogical. They are the same changes in the same systems, producing effects that function in very similar ways across species. The raccoon that comes alone to your yard is carrying something in her body's chemistry that has no name in raccoon experience, but that functions in every biological sense like the thing we call missing someone. She does not know she is grieving, she does not have the concept. She cannot reflect on the absence the way a human reflects on loss, but her body knows, her opioid system knows. The particular quality of her alone-ness in your yard is registered in her neurochemistry in a way that is not simply behavioral but is genuinely biochemically something like painful. She is carrying more than you can see, more than she can name, more than the darkness of your yard makes visible. She is carrying it in every visit, in every hour, in every moment of that particular vigilance that is heavier than it should be and that eating cannot quite relieve and that the morning does not entirely lift. She carries it the way anyone carries something they cannot put down and cannot name, silently, continuously, in the only way available to a creature who has no other choice. Social loss in raccoons is not permanent in its behavioral effects. The animal that has lost a companion does not simply remain solitary for the rest of its life. The social systems that govern raccoon life are resilient, and the drive to maintain social connection, to find new companions, to build new affiliative relationships, to rebuild the social fabric, is a powerful biological force. The raccoon that comes alone to your yard is, in part, doing what social animals do after loss. She is finding her way toward new connections. Researchers studying social recovery in raccoon populations after disruption have documented that raccoons actively seek to reestablish social contacts following companion loss, with individuals increasing investigation of unfamiliar conspecifics, spending more time at locations with high raccoon traffic, and showing the affiliative behaviors associated with the initiation of new social relationships. Your yard may be part of this. If other raccoons visit your yard or if the scent signatures of other raccoons are present in your yard, she is encountering those presences here, reading them, assessing them, deciding whether they are candidates for the kind of companionship she has lost. And if she keeps coming back to your yard, if your yard is becoming slowly a regular part of her reorganized world, it may be partly because your yard is a place where she has found something. not the specific companion she lost. Nothing fills that exactly, but something, a food source that is reliable, a space that feels safe, a schedule that is predictable, the particular comfort of a yard that has become, across many solitary visits, a place she knows. She is building, one visit at a time, a new normal. And your yard, your specific yard, with its specific feeder and its specific schedule and its specific quiet, is becoming part of what that new normal looks like. I have saved this one for last, because it is the one I think will stay with you the longest. When a social mammal loses a companion, the world becomes a different place in ways that are not visible from outside the animal's experience. The routes that were traveled together are now traveled alone. The food sources that were shared are now visited solo. The familiar landscape, unchanged in its physical features, is transformed in its social meaning by the absence of the one who made it familiar. In that transformed world, the things that have not changed, the genuinely unchanged, reliable, predictable things, acquire a particular importance. They are the anchors, the fixed points. The things that say this part of the world is still what it was, this part has not been taken. Researchers studying the behavioral role of environmental stability in social recovery in small mammals have found that individuals recovering from social loss show increased attachment to stable environmental features, familiar locations, reliable food sources, predictable schedules, in the period following loss, with these stable elements appearing to serve a buffering function against the instability produced by the social disruption. Your yard is one of those stable things for the raccoon that keeps coming back alone. Your feeder is still where it was, your schedule is still what it is. The particular quality of your yard, its sounds, its smells, its familiar geography is unchanged by whatever has changed in her life. When she comes to your yard, she comes to a place that is still itself, that has not moved, that has not disappeared, that is here tonight the way it was here last week and the week before. She keeps coming back to your yard because your yard is one of the things that has not changed. In a world that has lost its social shape, that is quieter than it should be, more solitary than it was built to be, heavier in ways she cannot name, your yard is the place that stays. The place that is still there. The place that offers, in the only way a place can offer anything, the particular comfort of the unchanged and the reliable. She comes back alone. She will come back again tomorrow night. Alone, searching, carrying more than is visible, eating less than she needs, watching with more exhaustion than the night requires. And she will be in your yard, the yard that has not changed, the yard that is still here. That is not a story about a raccoon visiting a food source. That is a story about finding the stable things when the world has become unstable. About the particular way that places carry us through the losses that people and animals and all the fragile social beings we are cannot carry alone. About what it means to have somewhere to go that has not moved. She keeps coming back because your yard is still here, because you are still here. Because in the particular darkness of her solitary nights, your yard is one of the things that has kept its shape. And that is worth something, more than you know, more than she can tell you. She will be there tonight, in the dark, alone, at the yard that has not changed. And that is enough, for now, for her, in the only way available to a small wild creature carrying too much in the quiet of your yard, it is enough. Before I go, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer in the comments below. Have you noticed the raccoon in your yard seeming somehow heavier than a raccoon should? More thorough in the searching, more careful in the eating, more present at the spots where nothing in particular seems to be? Have you ever watched her alone and felt, without being able to explain it, that aloneness was the wrong word for what she was doing? Tell me about it. Where were you? What did you see? What did it feel like to watch her? The stories this hidden backyard wildlife community shares are some of the most extraordinary I read every week. And every single one of them matters. If anything in this video changed the way you will look at the raccoon that comes alone, if it changed what you see in the particular quality of her aloneness, share it with someone who would understand. Sometimes the right perspective at the right moment changes what we notice for the rest of our lives. Thank you for being here at Hidden Backyard Wildlife. Tonight, if she comes, and she will come, look at her a little longer than you usually do. She is carrying something you can only see now that you know it is there. She will be in the yard that has not changed, doing the only thing she knows how to do. Coming back. I will see you in the next one.